The announcement came quietly. No parade, no banners, no smiling handshakes on television. Just a line on the wire. US and China agree to cut tariffs. 90 days. Temporary relief. Markets went still. Commentators called it progress. Beijing called it balance. But inside China, nothing moved. The factories that had been idle for weeks stayed quiet. The job boards in second-tier cities remained empty. The trains that once carried thousands of workers home for Spring Festival left half full. No one cheered, because no one believed it. A nation once obsessed with momentum is now built on delay. Delaying numbers, delaying layoffs, delaying the moment people realize it's not a slowdown, it's a stall. According to the agreement, China will open its doors to US soybeans and critical minerals. But nothing was said about chips, about capital, about the future. Just trade, just 90 days. Not a breakthrough, just a breath, for a system that's already gasping. So the question isn't, what changed? It's why did China accept a deal? That solves nothing? They said it was mutual. They said both sides gave in a little, just enough to ease tension. But when the fog clears, only one side looks like it's bleeding. The United States dropped tariffs on 134 categories of goods, mostly mid-range electronics, clothes, tool parts. China answered with cuts on soybeans, liquefied gas, and rare earth permits. According to Reuters, in May 2025, the agreement lasts just 90 days. And nothing was resolved on technology, finance, or digital infrastructure. That's not negotiation. That's surrender dressed in polite language. But why now? In Hangzhou, a steel worker has been living on half pay for 4 months. His factory hasn't received orders since January. He sleeps in a dormitory with no heat. 3 of his roommates have already left. Not fired, not laid off, just gone. They never closed the factory. They just turned the lights down. Across China's industrial belt, it's the same story. Warehouses full, ports quiet, machines humming at half speed to pretend there's still demand. In the headlines, Beijing says it's stabilizing. But no one explains why malls are empty, why streets in manufacturing towns go dark at 7 p.m. The economy isn't recovering, it's holding its breath. And Beijing needed time, not strength, just time, because something else is unraveling. In April 2025, Bloomberg reported that more than 160 local banks had quietly disappeared through forced mergers, closures, or silent absorption. Some changed names, others changed addresses, but the losses were real, and the people who once lined up for mortgage approvals now line up to withdraw what they can. There are no protests, not because people aren't angry, but because they're tired. From developers defaulting, from tech layoffs that never get reported, from a government that tells them to trust, but gives no number they can verify. This is why the truce happened, because factories aren't just low on orders. They're low on reasons to exist. The solar industry is flooding with unsold panels. EVs are stacking up in rural dealerships. One dealership owner in Hunan offered a brand new sedan at a 40% discount if the buyer paid in cash. Today, he didn't sell any that week, and all of it flows upward. Beijing needs to avoid a wave of bankruptcies in the south. It needs local governments to stay afloat, just long enough to survive the summer. And it needs foreign buyers to come back, even if only for a quarter. So it gave up what little leverage it had, opened up a door, lowered tariffs, offered permits, asked for nothing in return, because this deal wasn't about negotiation. It was about oxygen. The illusion is gone. China isn't playing chess anymore. It's managing a slow-motion collapse. And the 90-day truce? It wasn't a reset. It was a rescue, wrapped in silence. On state television, everything looks fine. Smiling anchors talk about stability. Markets, factories, exports, all on track. But if things were truly stable, why stop publishing the unemployment rate? In August 2023, China quietly erased youth job data. They said the number was too complex. By 2025, the silence still holds. That silence isn't accidental. It's strategic. Because beneath the slogans, the numbers have turned into threats. Each statistic risks triggering doubt. Doubt becomes fear, and fear becomes unrest. So instead of fixing the cracks, they painted over them. In a coastal city, a young logistics worker stands in front of a locked warehouse. He comes every morning, waits until lunch, goes home. He hasn't been paid in 6 weeks, but he's afraid to complain. The company still exists, on paper, still has permits, still claims technical difficulties. But there are no shipments, no schedules, just rust on the doors. Across the country, job apps show listings that don't reply. Interview invites vanish overnight. University graduates now list fake experience just to trigger callbacks. Still nothing. And the worst part? People stopped expecting anything else. Because hope has rules. And China broke them all. They told people to study harder, to work longer, to be grateful. But now, they tell them to lie flat, to stop asking, to endure. Censorship doesn't just erase information. It erases energy. Videos of empty malls vanish. Posts about delayed wages are flagged. News of local bank protests disappears within hours. Even search engines don't return the right terms anymore. What used to be called recession, now labeled adjustment. What used to be defaults, now called mergers. What used to be facts now just disappear. And yet, Beijing signed a trade deal, not to gain ground, but to buy time. The 90-day truce isn't a display of confidence. It's a mask for a government that can no longer explain why the numbers stopped adding up. There was no national broadcast, no Xi Jinping speech, no press conference about victory, because this isn't a victory, it's a ceiling. The point where silence becomes the only strategy left, where a government that once promised prosperity now relies on blackout. Not because it doesn't know what's wrong, but because it no longer knows what to say. In a different time, China would never have accepted this deal. Not without chips, not without sanctions lifted, not without some show of equality. But this time, it said yes, without conditions, without terms, without noise, because this wasn't about trade. It was about survival. For months, Beijing tried to hold the line, tried to show strength with silence. But the walls kept bending. Exports collapsed. Investment fled. Workers stood idle. And the world moved on. Companies that once saw China as their engine now see it as a liability. Supply chains rerouted. Contracts renegotiated. New hubs, Vietnam, India, Mexico, locked in. And while Beijing struggled to keep the machine warm, Washington was sealing the exits. The US didn't pause because it was pressured. Paused because it could afford to. Every week of this truce gives American companies time to embed supply elsewhere. Every quiet day helps build a post-China map of trade. The longer China breathes, the deeper the new roots grow, outside its borders. And those roots are strategic. In Mexico, semiconductor assembly is expanding. In Vietnam, electronics testing is scaling fast. In India, state-backed chip funds are pouring into fabrication and packaging. These aren't experiments. They're commitments. In 2023, China still had leverage. In 2025, it has requests. And what did it ask for? Not tech relief, not access to critical systems, not even a seat at the table. It asked for soybeans, and the chance to sell a little more before the lights go dim. Washington didn't have to give in. It gave a window, and made no promises for what comes next. The real shift isn't in tariffs. It's in power. Because when a superpower begs to ship goods without asking for terms, it no longer negotiates, pleads, and that plea echoes beyond trade. In the same week the truce was signed, joint naval drills circled Taiwan. Expanded troop presence in the Philippines was approved. Satellite surveillance doubled over key Chinese ports. This isn't coincidence. This is a strategy unfolding without need for headlines. China is not just facing tariffs. It's facing encirclement. Economically, militarily, technologically, and the more it denies the collapse, the more visible it becomes. Because real strategy doesn't announce itself. It surrounds you until you run out of exits. That's what this 90-day window is. Not peace, but pressure coded in diplomacy. And when it ends, nothing will return to what it was. The companies won't come back. The investors won't reinvest. The workers won't believe again. Because what broke wasn't just trade. It was narrative. China was supposed to rise forever. But even empires lose their step quietly. And the louder they pretend otherwise, the clearer that fall becomes. Start in a warehouse outside Wenzhou. The gates are open, but no one walks in. Not the workers, not the trucks, not the clients. Just a single guard under a plastic umbrella, sitting in silence. The factory isn't closed. It's paused. At least that's the word management used. Paused. Not bankrupt. Not liquidated. Paused for 3 months. Maybe 6. Inside, the assembly lines are clean. No rust. No debris. Just stillness. Because in China, shutdowns rarely happen with noise. They happen with disappearance. 1 shift disappears. Then 2. Then the cafeteria opens late or doesn't open at all. And the workers, they leave. Quietly. One by one. Without being told. Without saying goodbye. Some go home. Some find delivery jobs. Some just vanish, swallowed by the gray economy. This is how a factory collapses in 2025. Not with a headline, but with an empty parking lot. At a logistics hub in Chengdu, things still move, but slower. The forklifts hum. The drivers wait longer between loads. The schedules are lighter. The chatter is gone. They used to ship to 10 countries. Now they ship to 3. And the biggest client hasn't paid since February. So the manager cuts hours. Tells staff to rotate off twice a week. Not layoffs, just less work. The staff nod. They understand. They've heard it before. In textiles, in packaging, in aluminum. They all say the same thing now. Stay on the books. Stay quiet. Wait it out. But what are they waiting for? A university graduate in Xi'an opens her inbox every morning. There are no offers. Just spam. Just ghosted interviews. Just silence. She majored in economics. Wrote her thesis on China's recovery strategy. Now she sells phone cases online. Lives with her mother. Her father hasn't worked since his real estate firm collapsed. No one talks about it at dinner, because everyone's life has shrunk. And no one wants to make it feel smaller. They say it's temporary, that the government is stabilizing the markets, that exports will recover. But she no longer refreshes the job boards. She knows what's not coming. A man in Inner Mongolia sells frozen beef from a small shop. 2 years ago, he could stock weekly. Now he stocks once a month. The imports have slowed. Customers are fewer. Prices are unpredictable. When he asked his supplier why, the reply was short. Shipping's delayed. Warehouses under review. Bank paperwork. He didn't ask again. Because in 2025, everyone knows, you don't ask too many questions about logistics. The cracks stretch farther than headlines can cover. In Shandong, a rural hospital reports late wages. In Chongqing, school repairs are postponed. In Harbin, local banks merge overnight. Logos changed before dawn. No announcement, just screens that say, "System update. Please try again later." And through it all, the slogans remain. Posters on highway overpasses still promise rejuvenation. Speeches still say resilience. But even in official tone, fatigue leaks through. The 90-day tariff truce didn't cause this. It revealed it. Because for 90 days, no one could blame Washington. No one could point to external pressure. No one could say, "We are under siege." And yet, the layoffs continued. The defaults continued. The silence continued. So what changed? Nothing, except the permission to hope. Because for many inside China, this was the last proof they needed. There's no second miracle, no next wave, no rebound waiting just around the corner. just lower targets, fewer shipments, and a new kind of daily life built around less certainty, less motion, less belief, and still no protest, no mass movement, no collapse on camera, just people adjusting to 4-day workweeks with 2 days paid, to living with in-laws, to pretending the degree still matters. Because collapse in China doesn't come like a fire, it comes like fog, silent, slow, total, and when it clears, what's left may not look broken, but it no longer works. They signed the deal. They said it was balance. They said it was temporary. 90 days, no cameras, no celebration. China opened its ports just a little. The US opened its tariffs just enough. And then, nothing. No surge in factories. No jobs returning. No headlines declaring victory. Just silence. Silence in the warehouses. Silence in the job boards. Silence in the cities that once lived by motion. This isn't recovery. It's waiting. But waiting for what? If this deal was strength, why were the workers never told? If this was diplomacy, why did the slogans grow louder while the lights dimmed? If this was peace, why does it feel like breathing through a straw? So here's the final question. If a superpower enters a truce, but no one in that country smiles, no one hires, no one believes, did the truce really happen? Or was it just a line in the sand, drawn right before the tide comes in?